The stallion had crippled 2 men in 6 weeks. The first was Deke Parrish, who had 40 years of breaking horses and a reputation that stretched from Sage Flats to Denver, and the stallion threw him into the fence so hard it shattered 3 ribs and his left collarbone, and ended his career in the time it takes a man to hit the ground. The second was a young hand named Gil Oakley, who had more nerve than sense, and who lasted 11 seconds before the stallion planted both hind hooves in his hip and put him in a bed at the doctor's house for a month. After that, nobody in Sage Flats would go near the animal. Cole Brennan stood at the corral fence and watched the stallion pace. The horse was magnificent. 16 hands of blood bay muscle, with a black mane, and a temperament that could charitably be described as murderous. Cole had bought him from a cavalry remount station for a price that represented most of his savings, because the stallion's bloodline was the key to the breeding program Cole needed to save his ranch. Without foals from that line, the bank would call his note by spring. With them, he could build a herd worth 10 times what he owed. But the stallion would not be ridden, would not be bridled, would not be touched. The animal paced the corral like a caged cougar, ears flat, nostrils flared, and any man who climbed the fence came back out faster than he went in, if he was lucky, and on a stretcher if he was not. Cole was 3 days from shooting the horse when Ada Mercer rode into Sage Flats. She came from the north, riding a dun mare with a pack mule behind her, wearing a split riding skirt and a man's canvas jacket and a hat that had seen better years. She was lean and straight-backed and somewhere around 30, with sun-darkened skin and steady hands, and eyes the color of sage that missed nothing and apologized for nothing. She rode directly to the livery, stabled her horse, and walked into the saloon and asked for a cup of coffee and a meal. The talk in the saloon was about the stallion. It was the only talk in Sage Flats that week. Ada listened without speaking while she ate her beans and cornbread, and then she set her fork down and said, to nobody in particular, "Where is this horse?" The room went quiet. 3 men looked at her. The bartender wiped a glass and said, "Brennan's Corral, north end of town. But if you are thinking of watching, stand back from the fence. That animal will reach through the rails." "I am not thinking of watching," Ada said. "I am thinking of gentling him." The silence that followed was the particular kind of silence that happens when a room full of men decide simultaneously that a woman has lost her mind. "Ma'am," the bartender said carefully, "that horse put Deke Parrish in a sling and Gil Oakley in a bed. Deke Parrish has been breaking horses since before you were born." "Deke Parrish breaks horses," Ada said. "I gentle them. They are not the same thing." She finished her coffee and walked to the corral. Cole Brennan was leaning on the top rail when she arrived. He was tall and weathered, with broad shoulders and the kind of permanent squint that comes from years of looking across open range into the sun. His hands were scarred from rope work, and his jaw was set in the expression of a man who is watching his last hope pace in circles and planning to put a bullet in it. "My name is Ada Mercer," she said. "My father was Hosea Mercer. He gentled horses for the army from 61 to 74, without a rope, without a whip, and without losing a single animal. He taught me everything he knew. I would like to work with your stallion." Cole looked at her. He looked at the horse. He looked back at her. That horse crippled 2 men. Those men tried to break him. A horse like that does not need breaking. He needs to decide for himself. Decide what? That you are worth trusting. Cole was quiet for a long moment. The stallion paced. The wind moved through the sage and smelled of dust and October. "What do you charge?" he asked. "Room and board. If I gentle him, you pay me $50. If I cannot, you owe me nothing. And if he kills you, he will not kill me." She said it the way she said everything, calmly, flatly, as a statement of fact rather than a boast. And something in her certainty made Cole step back from the fence and say, "All right, you have 2 weeks." She did not climb the fence. She did not enter the corral. She pulled a hay bale to the outside of the rail and sat on it and was still. The stallion watched her. He paced to the far side of the corral and stood with his head high and his ears pinned and his whole body vibrating with suspicion. She sat. She did not move. She did not speak. She sat for 3 hours in the October sun, while the horse watched her, and then she stood up and walked away. She came back the next morning before dawn and sat on the bale again. This time she brought an apple. She set it on the ground inside the lowest rail and sat back and waited. The stallion ignored it for 2 hours. Then he walked over and ate it without taking his eyes off her. On the third day, she put her hand through the rail, palm up, with nothing in it. The stallion came close enough to smell her fingers and then wheeled away. On the fourth day, he came back and sniffed her hand and did not wheel. On the fifth day, he let her touch his nose. The men in town watched this from a distance and said nothing, because they did not know what to say. What Ada was doing did not look like horse breaking. It did not look like anything they had seen before. It looked like patience made physical. A woman sitting still, hour after hour, day after day, asking nothing, offering nothing but her presence, until the most dangerous animal in the territory decided of its own accord that she was safe. Cole found himself at the fence every morning before dawn, watching. He told himself it was because the horse was valuable, and he needed to know what was happening. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that he had never seen anyone move the way Ada moved, with a stillness that was not passive but deliberate, a calm that was not weakness, but the deepest kind of strength. She sat on that hay bale as if she had all the time in the world, and in a territory where everything was rushed and forced and fought for, that patience was the most remarkable thing he had ever witnessed. On the sixth evening, he brought her supper on a tin plate, salt pork and beans and a biscuit he had baked himself, badly, and sat on the fence rail while she ate. She ate the way she did everything, without hurry, and when she was finished, she set the plate down and said, "Your biscuits need more buttermilk." "My biscuits need a miracle." She almost smiled. It was the first crack he had seen in her composure, and it changed her face, made it warmer, younger, less guarded. "My father used to say that the hardest part of gentling a horse is gentling yourself first," she said. "You have to put down everything you brought to the corral, your expectations, your schedule, your pride, and meet the animal where it is, not where you want it to be." That sounds like advice for more than horses. It is. She looked at him. "Why did you buy a horse you could not ride?" "Because I needed his bloodline to save my ranch, and I was too stubborn to admit I could not handle him." That is honest. I am an honest man. I am just not always a smart one. "You were smart enough to let me try," she said, and something in the way she said it made him understand that this was the highest compliment Ada Mercer knew how to give. "You did not get in my way." On the 8th day, she opened the gate and walked into the corral. Cole's heart stopped. He was at the fence, where he had been every day, watching, and when he saw her step through the gate, he grabbed the top rail and opened his mouth to shout, and then closed it, because Ada had raised one hand, palm out, without looking at him, and the gesture said, "Do not move. Do not speak." The stallion stood 20 feet from her. His ears went forward, his nostrils flared. Ada stood in the center of the corral with her arms at her sides, and her weight balanced and her eyes on the horse's eyes, and she waited. The horse took a step toward her, then another. Then he stopped and blew, and she did not move, and he took another step and another, until he was close enough to touch, and she raised her hand, slowly, slowly, and laid it flat against his neck. The stallion's skin trembled under her palm. His ears twitched, but he did not rear. He did not strike. He stood there, breathing, with a woman's hand on his neck for the first time in his life, and the trembling slowly stopped. Cole exhaled. His hands were shaking on the rail. Over the next 4 days, Ada worked inside the corral. She moved around the stallion in slow circles, touching his neck, his shoulder, his withers, his flank. Always slow, always calm, always talking to him in a low, steady voice that Cole could not hear from the fence, but the horse could. She laid a blanket across his back on the 10th day. She put a halter on him on the 11th. On the 12th day, she leaned her weight across his back and swung up and sat there, bareback, with her hands in his mane, and the stallion did not move. Then he walked. He walked in a slow circle around the corral, with Ada on his back, and his head low and his ears forward, And when he stopped, she slid off and pressed her forehead against his neck, and the horse turned his head and nuzzled her shoulder, and Cole Brennan put his face in his hands, because he was not the kind of man who cried in front of people, but he was watching his ranch and his future and his last hope walk in a circle with a woman on its back, who had done in 12 days what no man in the territory could do at all. That evening, he found Ada in the barn, brushing the stallion down with slow, even strokes. The horse was calm. His eyes were half closed. He looked like a different animal. "How did you do that?" Cole asked. "I did not do anything," Ada said. "He did it. I just gave him time to decide." $50, Cole said. That was the deal. That was the deal. He paid her. He stood in the barn with $50 less, and a gentled stallion and a breeding future, and he looked at this woman who had ridden into town alone and done the thing everyone said could not be done, and he said, "I do not want you to leave." Ada stopped brushing. She turned and looked at him. "I was not planning to leave yet. The horse needs riding every day for the next month to hold the work. After that I still do not want you to leave." He took his hat off. He was not good at this. He was a rancher, not a poet. "Ada, I have watched you sit on a hay bale for 12 days and convince a killer horse that you were worth trusting. I have never seen anyone do what you do. I have never met anyone like you. I am asking you to stay, not for the horse, for me." Ada looked at him for a long time. She had been alone since her father died 4 years ago. She had traveled from ranch to ranch, gentling horses, sleeping in barns and haylofts and boarding houses, and she had never stayed anywhere, because no one had ever asked her to, in a voice that sounded like it meant something. Cole's voice meant something. It was rough and uncertain, and full of the particular vulnerability of a proud man who is not accustomed to asking for what he wants. "You watched me for 12 days, she said, "and you did not once tell me I was doing it wrong, because you were not doing it wrong. Every man I have ever worked for has told me I was doing it wrong. You did not. You just stood at the fence and trusted me." "I did. Why?" He looked at the stallion, standing calm and sleepy in the stall. "Because you were right, and because I have spent my whole life trying to force things to work instead of letting them decide, and watching you was the first time I understood that there might be another way." Ada set the brush down. She walked to where he stood and looked up at him. She was tall, but he was taller, and said, "I will stay, but I am not going to be a ranch wife who cooks and mends and stays in the kitchen. I am going to gentle your horses and build your breeding program, and ride when I want and where I want. I would not have it any other way." She put out her hand. He took it, and they stood in the barn with the gentled stallion, watching them from the stall, and shook on it, and then he did not let go of her hand, and she did not pull it away, and the handshake became something else, something warmer and steadier, and more certain than either of them had expected. In the weeks that followed, Ada rode the stallion every morning at dawn, while Cole watched from the fence, and the horse that had crippled 2 men moved under her like water, smooth and willing and trusting. She named him Prospect, because that was what he was, the prospect of a future, for the ranch and for her. Cole started bringing her coffee in the mornings, arriving at the corral with 2 tin cups and standing at the rail while she rode, and they talked the way 2 careful people talk when they are learning each other, in fragments, in small offerings, each one a little more than the last. She told him about her father, about the years they had spent riding from fort to fort, about the hundreds of horses they had gentled together, about the morning she found him dead in his bedroll with his hands folded and his face peaceful, as if he had simply decided he was finished. She told him she had been alone for 4 years, and that she had not minded it until now. He told her about the ranch, about the debt, about the 2 years he had spent trying to build a breeding program that everyone said was foolish, about the day he bought the stallion, and the sinking feeling when he realized the horse would not be ridden. He told her he had been alone too, not by choice but by circumstance, and that watching her work had taught him something he should have learned a long time ago, that the strongest thing a person can do is wait. They were married in November by the circuit judge in his office, with the bartender and the liveryman as witnesses. Ada wore her riding skirt because she did not own a dress and did not intend to buy one. And Cole said she looked perfect, and he meant it. That spring, the stallion sired his first foals, and Ada trained every one of them using her father's method. And the Brennan Ranch became known across 3 territories, not just for its horses, but for the woman who gentled them, the quiet woman with sage-colored eyes, who could convince any horse alive that she was worth trusting, and who had convinced one stubborn rancher of the same thing.